So today I want to talk about using the RF 35mm f1.8 and the RF 85mm f2 lenses in macro. And these lenses are pretty similar outside of focal length on paper. They both have 2:1 macro capabilities. They both have image stabilization built in for the RF mount. They're both under $600. They both, at least in name, have the same type of STM focus motor. And I already have videos talking about the overall performance of both of these lenses, but today I want to look at and compare the performance of these lenses specifically as macro lenses. So for macro photography, and this first thing is kind of hard to show on video, but the RF 35 definitely is more confident in focusing at macro distances. It is going to get the focus quicker and nail it more confidently than the 85. And so I set up this kind of ring shot. That's a pretty common usage for a lens with macro capabilities to get ring or detail shots at a wedding or something. And obviously this isn't the best ring shot, the dirty rings, there's not a whole lot going in the frame, but I just wanted to show how these lenses would perform at this. And first of all, I shot all of these shots handheld with these lenses, which just in and of itself is really awesome that these lenses are able to do that. And I'll say with the 85mm, it took about 10 shots for me to nail critical focus directly on the diamond in the ring, which again, for handheld, I think that's actually pretty impressive just in and of itself that the lens can do that. However, with the 35mm, I took about 10, maybe a few more shots with a 35, and all of them nailed the focus. And that gave me the ability to also get a few different angles with the RF 35 as well. Now, the first thing to mention is the difference in focal length and how that is going to play out in these macro shots. With the 85mm, you are going to have a lot more focus on the subject of your photo. And with the 35mm, you're just going to bring in a lot more of your background into the shot. That can be difficult, particularly for lighting your shots, because you might get in front of your light sources in a lot of cases with the 35mm, called shadow. And like you can see what happened in my shot, the backlight actually showed up in the shot with the 35mm, so I had to move around a bit with that one. I will say because the 35mm focuses better at macro distances, I was able to move around and change up my composition several times and still nail focus. But for most situations, I think people are probably going to be doing this on a tripod, and then that's not going to be as big as an issue because I think the 85mm can handle focusing from a tripod without any difficulties. And that's going to be a more normal use case. And if you are shooting macro from a tripod, I think the 85mm is actually going to work more in your favor because you don't have to be right as close up on your subject, and it'll help with lighting a lot because you'll have more room to play around with where you position the lights. I tried to do a little sharpness test shooting both of these lenses at their closest focusing distance at f3.5. I messed this up a little bit because with being so close to the subject, just very tiny shifts in where your focus distance is makes a big difference. So one of the lenses here is focused on the stars. One of the lenses is focused on the date at the bottom, but I think overall in sharpness, they're doing about the same here, and I think it's pretty respectable for, again, what you're getting at this price point from these lenses. And keeping in mind that these are handheld macro shots. One thing I want to point out, I shot both of these at the same settings, right back to back with each other, so the lighting was the same, and the 85mm came out about a third of a stop darker, so I had to push the exposure about a third of a stop on this one. And I saw regularly throughout using the 85mm lens that the light transmission through this is just a little bit less than through the 35 or even the RF Nifty 50 lens now. And so it will perform just slightly worse in low light, especially taking into account the fact that the maximum aperture on the 85mm is f2 and not f1.8. But in reality, especially with how well the R series cameras perform in low light with high ISO values. I don't think this is something that will actually affect anything. So using these lenses for macro in video, I will quickly say that image quality is about the same between the two lenses. There's not a whole lot of difference. However, and I've talked about this in my review video of the 85mm lens by itself, the video autofocus performance on this lens is absolutely terrible and, in my opinion, just completely unusable. And at macro distances, it actually gets even worse. Whereas with the 35mm, the autofocus performance, even at macro distances, is actually very usable. If you need, for whatever you're working on, a lens that you can do video with at macro focusing distances, definitely go with the 35. It is very usable. The 85 is not going to be usable in video, especially at macro distances. So which of these lenses might be right for you? So image quality for this price from both of these lenses is actually really good. I don't think anything that anybody's going to squabble with for this price range. In photo, I'll give a little bit of a usability point to the 35mm because of having faster, better autofocus at macro distances, especially if you're using it for handheld macro shots. But I will give a huge usability point bump to the 85mm because of not needing to be so close, especially if you're on a tripod, which I think is the more realistic use for these lenses in macro. The 85 is going to be better. It's going to allow you to light your shots better, and the focus performance is going to be fine if it's on a tripod. But if you're thinking about using either of these lenses for any kind of macro video work, I would say hands down, go with the 35mm lens. The 85mm is basically unusable in video, and the 35mm actually works really well and performs really well even at macro distances in video. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in either of these lenses, tell me down below, which one are you leaning towards? Maybe both. What are you planning to use them for? If you are thinking about buying either of these lenses or any of the other equipment that I've mentioned in this video, I'll leave affiliate links in the description down below. If you purchase through those links at no extra cost to you, you will help bring in a little bit of income to help support this channel so that I can keep making videos for you guys. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button. See ya.